Good morning. All right, today we're going to be going over freeCodeCamp, basic algorithm scripting challenges, and we're going to be doing where do I belong? And I'm going to be solving this two different ways. One is going to be a more obvious way than another. So let me go over a few things here first. I'll share my screen so I can show you what I want to go over. We're going to be using sort. We've used sort before. Remember, that's what sort does is it goes through, and if let's say we have a an array of strings, and it'll sort it in, let's say, alphabetical order. Now we can also use sort, all right, in this way right here, where we're comparing numbers A and B. Well, what does that do? Well, there we're going to be sorting in order from largest to smallest. So here we have an array of numbers, and we sort saying A minus B, all right, and using the syntax, and then we get an array sorted in order from smallest to largest. Next, we want to take a look at another array method, which is push. We've used push before. All it's going to do is take whatever we give it, whatever parameter we give it here, and it pushes it onto the end of an array. Okay, and the last thing that we're going to be using, all right, is an array method index of, where index of is just going to give us the index of whatever value that we put into the parameter. If that value is not present, we do get a -1, however. So with that information, let's take a look at where do I belong. So what are we trying to do? All right, so we want to return the lowest index at which a value, the second argument, should be inserted into an array, which is the first argument. The return value should be a number. So we want to insert whatever num here into the array, and then sort it, and then get the index of that number. Where does it belong? And from largest to smallest. Let's take a look at this example, 1.5. 1.5 would go as in between 1 and 2. So it would go in right there, which would be the 0, 1, all right, or the first index, because it's a 0 base index, all right? And so you should be returning a 1 for the first position, or the first index number. So let's do it that way. So again, let's start off with getting our num into our array, which we can just use push. So our push num. Okay. It'd help if I had the correct syntax. And so here we go. And let's return our array. See what we get. Just as we suspected, we have that num pushed onto the end of the array. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to sort. So we want to sort from largest to smallest. So let's go and use our arr.sort. And let's remember the syntax here that we want to use. We want to use this syntax. All right, notice that we're going to use an anonymous function taking two parameters a and b, and we're going to return a minus b. And that'll allow us to sort. And we've used this before, so let's sort function with a comma b. So we're taking in our two parameters. All right, and then we need to have something happen here, which is just simply returning our a minus b. Right. And let's remember to end this sentence here as well. Boom. Okay, so now remember here we had 40, 60, 50. What happens when we run this test again? We get 40, 50, 60. Now it's in order from smallest to largest. So all we have to do now is, instead of returning our array, I want to return the index of that value. How do we do that? We can just say, instead of returning the ARR, I can just return the ARR index of What do we want the index of? Well, this value here, which was, all right, the argument num. Run the test. All right, there is a simple solution. Great. Well, what I want to do now is I want to do another solution. So this is a very straightforward solution following step by step the directions. But how can we solve this a different way? Well, let's take a look at how we can get this done. So I'm just going to erase all of this. And I've found another solution that we can work through as well. We can actually solve this with a for loop and a counter. So if we take a look at this value, and we want to return a 1 because the index of this, once it goes into the array, would be 1. Another way of thinking of this is 1 also means how many numbers are smaller than this number. So if you think of it that way, the index value in the array, all right, is also a count of how many things are smaller than that number. So the index of 0 in this, or 1 of this, the index of 0, which is the value 1, all right, has 0 things smaller than it. So if you think of it like that, we can go through and iterate through this array using a for loop and just count the number of things that are smaller than our num. So how would we set that up? What would that syntax look like? Well, we can just start with a counter, just like you would do in programming your robots or anything else, a simple counter. All right, so we'll have a count, and I will initialize that at 0, so it starts at 0. And then we're just going to use our for loop. So for our I equals 0, right? I is less than ARR dot length I plus plus. And again, this is the same way we iterate through loops. So we've done this multiple times. So hopefully at this point, you're starting to get used to using for loops this way, just to iterate through an array. Now we need to do something here. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. So what do we want to do? Right now, we are going through and iterating through every object in this array. But what we want to do is compare it to this number. So how do you do that? So how do you get that comparison? Well, we can say that the spot in the array that we want, or the index value of that array, we want to compare to num. And we want to do something if the number is smaller than that num. So what's another way of saying that? Well, ARR I. Remember now, as we're in this for loop, this ARR, with the I is going to be the index value of, so let's look at the first time through this for loop, 0. In this situation, it would be the number 40. So how do we know if that is smaller than that number 50? And that's really what we're looking at here. Is that number smaller? All right. So if it is, if 40 is smaller, we want to do something. We want to add to the count. So let's just say if ARR sub I minus the value num, if that is less than 0. Okay. So what does this say? It says that if I take this number and whatever position I'm in this case, 40, and I subtract 50 from it, is that a negative number? Okay. If it's a negative number, it means that the 40 is less than 50, right? That makes sense. So why don't we take this and put that in an if statement so we can do something with it? So let's just say if that happens, okay, all I want to do is add 1 to my count variable. Okay. Remember to end your sentence again. So every time it finds a number in the array that's smaller than it, It's just going to increment the count variable. So at the end here, all I have to do is return my count, right? And that's going to be the number of things that are smaller than that num in that first array. If I don't have any syntax errors, aha, to the nines, success. Okay, so we've gone through. We've solved this with both a for loop and using a push, a sort, and then the index of. So again, we've gone through and done this 2 separate ways. So hopefully that was informative, and I will see you next time. Bye.